Welcome, everyone. This is Glenn McKnight and Alfredo Calderon for VSIG. We have a distinguished speaker today. I just want to make a mention that our security module speaker from either Johannesburg or Pretoria, I can't remember which location she's based in, they're side by side. Varsa Vishal, she is a lawyer and specializes in cybersecurity. Be really great to have her next Monday. So I'll make sure if there's any literature in advance to get it to you as well. So let me start off with welcome, Riad and Callum. I just would like to take a minute and then we're going to share the screen with you. I just want to read a quick bio, a very distinguished speaker today. Riad is a seasoned economist and international development professional specializing in trade, investment, migration, technology innovation to address issues and facilitate decisions on policymakers with over 20 years experience. Did you start at 15 years old? Is that right? Yeah. Were you 15 when you started?
No, I'm older than what you can think.
Oh, okay. Okay. He's worked with a alphabet soup of organizations, UNDP, UNCTAD, UNITR, and ILO, and the University of Paris. Extensive experience on an economic and policy advisor to the UN and foreign governments, such as providing assessment and policy advice on economic recovery and livelihood to support countries to the mainstream and implement the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. He's adept at managing programs and staff, strategic and political savvy, and works in multiple languages, working in fragile and post-conflict countries, contexts in small island states, such as Comoros, Mauritius, Cambodia, Rwanda, Afghanistan, Guinea, Burkina Faso, and many, many more. Well, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you. It's a real pleasure.
Okay, so we, Alfredo, turn it over to you to share the screen so Riad could put up his slides.
Yes, he can share his screen.
Thank you very much. Okay. Let's see.
We're just waiting for the slideshows to show up. Okay, here it's coming. Oh, perfect.
Okay.
And sorry, Riad, would you
Put it on.
would you prefer us to wait to give you questions to the end, or do you mind asking, allowing us to ask questions throughout this session? What's your preference?
I'd rather have it at the end.
Okay.
I'm joined by as we said, my colleague Callum, with whom we work together very closely, and both of us we will answer to the questions. So
excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, over to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting us to participate to this event. So I'd like to start with a bit of context first. International development in a recent decade has shifted from offline to online, from public service delivery to driving behavior change by leveraging digital products and services such as mobile. Digital channels are also now considered to be key development tools, from the potential of approach such as big data to the usefulness of collective intelligence. I'll come back to this a little bit later during my presentation. However, expectations have also risen. Increasingly, government and even development organizations are being judged against the best of the digital private sector. We are also getting access to a phenomenal range of new types of data and new insights, from geospatial data to sensor and other information. This has broadened our ability to understand what is or isn't working in the context of development. And this is where the internet comes in. The internet has been an incredible force for development and the planet, for the people, providing communication, connectivity, culture, and commerce. As a recovering economist, my team are very familiar with me talking about externalities. And the internet has very exciting positive externalities and multiplier effect. Getting people online is often a good in itself, and the more people online, the increased potential the internet offers. Connectivity is fundamental to every single one of the Sustainable Development Goals, and it is the utility of the 21st century. The connectivity is crucial for economic development, the provision of information, increased opportunities, and service delivery. It is a foundation, enabler, and a catalyst for all 70 SDGs, from the role of connectivity in improving education and healthcare to its role in supporting innovation to protect and improve lives below and above water, as well as the importance of inclusive connectivity in driving strong institutions and delivering useful and relevant public services, and its role in improving the strength and competitiveness of our countries. As an example from the continent of Africa, an increase of 10% in mobile internet penetration can lead to a direct impact of the GDP per capita per 2.5%. In the past decade, global internet use has more than doubled, from 2.18 billion users at the start of 2012 to 4.95 billion at the start of 2022. Last year, for the first time, more than half of the world's population were using mobile internet. Our friends at Our World in Data have some fantastic statistics on internet use. For example, on any day in the last 5 years, there were on average 640,000 people coming online for the first time. That's 27,000 people every hour, but there is still more to do. As the importance, as you can see here, of connectivity only increases, the gap between those who have and don't have connectivity, or those who do and don't benefit, is only widening. And this has been accelerated in many countries by the pandemic. I borrowed this chart from Google, a very interesting one, and it's also something we're hearing in our work. We're running a number of digital readiness assessments in several countries, accompanied by a larger scale public service. In the countries in which we've been working, only around a quarter of respondents think that most people are being reached by digital and digital services. The UN Tech Envoy reaffirmed this challenge in a report last year. For the least developed countries, the promises of connectivity remain unfulfilled. Only 2 LDCs have met target 9.c of the SDGs related to internet universality and affordability. A target all LDCs were supposed to have reached by 2020. A still big investment needs to be done. Several other countries are edging closer and will likely meet the target by 2025, but 26, more than half of all LDCs, remain far off. Although the number of people who remain unconnected to internet has now dropped below 3 billion people for the first time, but the inequity is stark. 1 in 4 people across lower and middle income countries are still unaware or even of the existence of mobile internet. It is also maybe becoming more unaffordable to get online in the first place. In many of these countries, internet-enabled handset and data become less affordable due to the pandemic. The negative consequences of the internet are also often disproportionately felt by lower income countries and marginalized economies. With this in mind, first, I would like to discuss the area of access to connectivity. As I mentioned, approximately 3 million people around the world are still offline, many in lower income countries, and within these countries, divides are also widening between rural and urban areas along income, gender, and ethnic lines, and for people with disability. Our friends at GSMA have split this challenge into 2 areas, the coverage gap and the usage gap. The coverage gap, I'll come back to it in more details a little bit later. I first discuss usage. There are 3.4 billion people who live within the footprint of a mobile broadband network but don't use it. 93% of these people live in low and middle income countries. A big part of this is lack of awareness of the internet and the potential it offers. Nearly a quarter of the adult population in some countries don't know about mobile internet. Awareness continues to increase, but growth has significantly slowed over the past 2 years. Part of improving this situation is also about giving people access to the devices, products, and services that are useful for their lives and livelihood. Google is doing some very interesting work here with their Camera Go initiative, which is looking to develop a high quality and affordable smartphone camera. Recognizing that access to a camera is one of the biggest reasons people want and buy a smartphone, but on many entry-level devices, the built-in camera still can only produce low-quality photo. But beyond this, there still exists real issues of digital literacy, as well as data and device affordability. This all need to be tackled if we are to shape inclusive digital societies. And in many parts of the world, the digital infrastructure financing gap is also increasing. In Asia, it could reach $500 billion by 2040. It is particularly an issue in many lower income countries and is particularly evident in a lack of investment from the private sector. This gap could have real impact on economic growth. For example, reducing the export opportunities around connectivity-driven industries such as smart cities. I would also like to make two broader points about access. First, access isn't linear, particularly in poor households and amongst women and girls. Phones or internet devices can be lost or stolen or sold to pay for essential goods and bills. We need to understand the nuance between different aspects such as access and ownership of devices. We need to be alert to these complexities. And secondly, we shouldn't see access as a binary definition. Whether people have access to connectivity or not, it is how connectivity is or isn't useful. Something I come back to it in a moment. Moving to connectivity, I'd like to unpack some of these areas in a bit more detail. Outside of many cities, and even within some of them, the quality of connectivity can be highly variable. This is the concept of meaningful connectivity that I just touched upon. This is a concept advocated by the Alliance for Affordable Internet. Access isn't enough. It's about delivering the experience that's needed to function in the digital economy, including with bandwidth-heavy activities such as remote working and education. This is another aspect of the nuance I mentioned earlier. While 2 in 3 people are now online, according to the current definition of internet access, billions lack the meaningful connectivity they need to make the most of the internet. This has real impact. In a recent study by the Alliance, users with meaningful connectivity were around a third more likely to do essential activities online, like access healthcare, study, look for a job, or participate in a digital economy. The effort needed to improve connectivity are significant, from policy to last mile delivery. There's some great work going on in this space. In 2021, the internet exchange points in Haiti and Panama were strengthened, whilst in the Papua New Guinea, the island's first community network was established. We also need to focus on getting the basic right. There's no shortage of article or insight about 5G. But by 2025, 56% of the world will still be on 4G connection. And a further 23% will be using 2G or 3G connection. And we need to be delivering experience that meet the needs and realities of citizens. We should see the reality of the world that we are living in. This work may also require making the case for connectivity, particularly to rural communities, where the benefit or potential of this technology are less familiar. I would like to touch upon inclusion. As I mentioned, there are real issues of inclusion in the context of connectivity. In fact, digital is fast becoming the global matrix of both inclusion and exclusion. We're seeing divides between and within countries, between rich and poor, urban and rural, and between genders. And after years of progress toward women's equal digital inclusion, we are now seeing a slowdown and in some cases, a reversal. Women remain 7% less likely than men to own a mobile phone. 264 million fewer women than men are accessing mobile internet. And digital inclusion is not only good policy, it's good economics. Countries have missed out on $1 trillion USD in GDP as a result of women exclusion in digital world. In 2020, the loss of GDP was 126 billion USD. But we also need to be future-proofing inclusion. By 2025, 1 billion more people will have their first smartphone. And this new user may be quite different to the previous population, as we can see from this research by Google. They will likely have lower incomes, less formal education, and live in less developed area with more unreliable internet. The exposure to technology will be more limited than those already using smartphone, and many will lack confidence in how to use their devices. How can we ensure they can play meaningful role in digital economy? And many of these new users will also be young people, particularly in priorities countries such as the small island developing states, whose development is at risk from the brain drain that is caused by young people seeking opportunities elsewhere. To understand more about demographic, we have been doing our own research too. We at UNDP have been running a global survey on WhatsApp, Facebook, Messenger, and Telegram to explore the hopes, concerns, and challenges that young people across cities are thinking about in the context of digital economy. As a snapshot of this finding, you can see here the thought of a number of young people about the benefit that technology is affording them. Young people in small and developing states are excited about the potential that digital could offer for learning, communication, and connection, and opportunities. But to achieve all this, we need to ensure we get inclusion right. Returning to externalities, my favorite topics as an economist, the internet has a number of this negative multiplier effect. I like to focus on the environmental impact first and foremost. It is very difficult to impact the emission and environmental impact of the internet. It depends on devices, connections, resolutions, time of day, and much more besides. And these numbers are changing all the time with both improvement in efficiency, but also increases in usage and changes in users' behavior. I'd like to walk you all through what we've been considering as the internet value chain from infrastructure to individuals. We start with foundational internet infrastructure, wired and wireless connectivity. We're seeing cities and towns around the world explore how to increase the efficiency of digital infrastructure rollouts. For example, DIG-1's policies that improve the coordination of fiber optic installation can also reduce the emission caused by traffic congestions. We've been working with the World Economic Forum to shape a model policy to support cities in this process. For wireless connectivity, switching away from diesel generator could have significant impact. We're seeing mobile network operators such as Cellcard in Cambodia increasingly using renewable energy across their network infrastructure. Cloud technology can also reduce emission by leveraging computing resources elsewhere that can be powered by renewable energy. But data centers consume incredible amount of energy and require a lot of equipment and water cooling and other technologies. We're seeing positive effort, including Microsoft commitment to carbon negative by 2030 but more could be done. This includes providing granular data on cloud IT emission to customers and policymakers. Some providers have started down this path, but there's need to be combined effort across the whole industry, as we need an accelerated drive towards renewable energy to power cloud infrastructure. We also need to look at how we're leveraging internet-driven innovations such as big data and AI. The carbon footprint of training a single artificial intelligence system can be considerable. One study noted that the computing power of training a relatively basic model emitted as much as 284 tons of carbon dioxide, 5 times the lifetime emission of the average car. Let's think about it. It's a very important issue. Increasing transparency can be important here. I saw one academic suggesting AI researcher publish energy usage alongside their academic paper. We could also look to improve method and processes relating to emerging technologies. This could include exploring more elegant ways to explore data, not just huge neural network or other massive models. For example, making some proprietary data open to avoid the need to be rerun modeling could be a very exciting and impactful development. We also need to focus on the end users, and this presents a number of challenges and opportunities. First is looking at the internet-enabled devices that people are using and their impact on the environment. Priority like tackling e-waste. We're seeing more interest in right to repair and similar initiatives around the world. In 2019, 53.6 million tons of e-waste was generated globally, but in the same year, only 17.4% of e-waste were recycled. The type of internet products and services being used are also worth exploring. Increased usage of delivery and platform economy apps during the pandemic saw considerable increases in plastic waste that accompanied those deliveries. Emerging initiatives like Metaverse could reduce travel and emission, but also increase data usage and the associated environmental impact I just mentioned. We may even need to encourage responsible digital consumption. The same way that we turn light off when we leave a room could also provide an insight into how we could shift our digital behaviors. One study from Yale University noted that if 17 million streaming subscribers lowered the quality of their video, it could reduce monthly greenhouse gas emission by up to 3.5 million tons. That will be the equivalent of eliminating 6% of monthly coal consumption in the United States, according to the study. But we can even look further upstream at how we are building the digital economy. In digital, we're driven by user-centered design, ensuring that the product and services we build are founded on the needs, realities, and aspirations of users. Co-design, testing, and iterating are key components of this. But should we also start thinking more about environment-centered design or humanity-centered design principles, building products and services that mitigate or outright avoid negative impact on the environment? As an example, more and more digital platforms employ continuous scrolling and addictive design. Tools like autoplay, recommended articles, and web page without any end. This encourages us to spend more time on platform, which in turn leads to greater data usage and likely increased emission. We may see some interesting differentiation happening here. There's one online magazine whose website is driven by solar power, and because of this, it sometimes goes offline. Some websites are also trailing opening hours, reducing 24/7 availability, demand, and emissions. But we need to ensure that this limitation don't affect the ability and opportunities of the most marginalized to participate in the digital economy. Websites with closing times shouldn't exclude those in other time zones from purchasing key goods. And access to information should be founded on resilient and reliable infrastructure. And there will also growing role for policymakers here. One particular example became clear as I was drafting this talk. Finding reliable, public, and recent data regarding the environmental impact of digital products and services is very, very difficult. Should we be requiring companies to publish and share more? Finally, I would like to highlight the very different challenges and circumstances involved in delivering connectivity. As I mentioned at the outset, much of the difficulty with connectivity, whether rollout, investment, or usage, is linked to access, affordability, and experience. These aspects are very different depending on the geographic area, regardless of countries, to some extent. The three areas are urban, typical city deployment, rural, which can include some larger towns, ultra-rural, often very small villages or settlement. I'm going to walk you through each of these geographic areas, some of the challenges, but also what's being done well. These are examples from around the world and across the industries and government. These aren't all being led by UNDP, but in many countries, we're working with them to build on this connectivity work. As an aside, many of the examples I will walk you through about delivering coverage, but the usage gap, those connected or covered by the internet, but not using it, is essential to consider. We've done a lot of work on this at UNDP, providing skills and other initiatives to driven usage and engagement. First, urban. Urban connectivity is a combination of wired and wireless, but it can be complicated and busy market. It can also bring real difficulties with competition and conflict between providers, disruption to citizens, but also ensuring that connectivity is future-proofed. First, national connectivity plan can be useful in driven connectivity effort. They can focus effort and lead to real impact. Second, in a city, the provision of public assets, including things such as public toilet, can be expensive for local and national government to roll out and to maintain. With this in mind, several cities in India provide free or reduced cost right to connectivity providers to install infrastructures on such assets in exchange for funding their upkeep. This is also getting broader traction, recognizing that the public sector often has a sizable asset portfolio. We're again working with the World Economic Forum to develop a model policy for cities to make the most of their assets and to roll out connectivity to their population. I would also like to highlight the importance of enabling infrastructure sharing between operators. This has been recognized in many countries. On the wireless side, this can be about legislation to allow upgrading and sharing of infrastructure assets without requiring additional fees from operator. From wired provider, it is about enabling sharing of duct space and sharing works. These initiatives are particularly important in urban settings, where space is a premium. And this minimizes disruption and burden to cities officials and residents. This is an outcome of the earlier Dig Once policy we developed and I talked a little bit about. Connectivity in a rural setting is about achieving universal coverage. Often mobile, as fixed line can be problematic in the nearer terms. But there are challenges around low population density and disparate populations. Individuals may not see the usefulness of connectivity or be able to afford it. Whilst for provider, the cost of delivery can be extensive, with customers often not providing sufficient spend to make some deployment viable. Operators often mention commercial confidentiality in the context of a reluctance to share coverage data, but it is possible to get this information. In India, Airtel publishes the location of all of their towers, whilst the Canadian connectivity regulator has a downloadable list of every tower with all radio and antenna information and map of all FTTH deployment. These initiatives allow targeted focus on understanding not spot and where connectivity efforts should be focused. When talking about rural or ultra-rural, we're often talking about wireless due to the challenges in getting fiber into the ground. However, there's an initiative in the United Kingdom making good progress in delivering rural full fiber, B4RN, broadband for the rural north. It is a community-owned initiative that has delivered full fiber broadband to nearly 10,000 properties in the past few years. Of particular interest on its site, thus, it is all documentation and guidance is made available for others to replicate this approach. The three components of expense in running a rural or remote cell site are the base station technology itself and the tower it is on, the backhaul technology that connect to the core network, and finally, the power and energy to actually keep it all running. Many MNOs are exploring solar and hybrid power solutions. Ultra-rural is about how to reach the very last mile. Often, in an incredibly complex and challenging setting, the challenges are very similar to the rural setting, but greatly exacerbated. Building and maintaining network is expensive and a real logistical challenge, from the provision of energy to keeping them functioning. Revenue will likely not meet this cost, so subsidies or alternative business models are going to be needed. Digital literacy and understanding of the need of connectivity will also be lacking. In ultra-rural, wireless is often the main option, and satellite to some extent, and potentially more and more the market develops. In some places, commercial investment, even when balanced by public subsidies, aren't going to happen within a realistic time frame. Community networks owned and managed by local communities can add value here. The regulator in Brazil put together a comprehensive policy to enable community network. This provides connectivity, but also skills and employment opportunities for individuals at risk of crime and marginalization. The regulator has also produced comprehensive resources to support deployment. Moving to Mexico, many wireless solutions have historically been complicated, expensive, and complex towers that are hard to install and maintain in rural areas. In recent years, though several simplified solutions have come to the market, a particularly successful one is the Huawei Rural Star, a simple pole that is delivering connectivity in ultra-rural communities across Latin America, Sub-Saharan Africa, and some countries in Asia, such as Thailand and Indonesia. Universal Service Access Funds subsidize commercially complex connectivity rollout. They have a mixed performance, with some accused of underspending or negatively impacting on the market. But many have also had considerable impact and brought communities online that will otherwise likely still be unconnected. Pakistan has made good progress with its setup, with some lessons learned, and even exploring co-investment in emerging technologies such as 5G. Finally, development in technology such as improvement in RAN technology have accelerated 3G deployment across sub-Saharan Africa. There have also been development in microwave technologies, satellite, and high-altitude platform to connect very remote population. A lot is going on. Similarly, innovation and energy are also improving the feasibility of rural deployment. In closing, I would just like to mention how we at UNDP are working with countries across these areas of access, connectivity, and inclusion. And this all founded on our UNDP digital strategy. To drive access and uptake of the internet and connectivity, we're building skills and ecosystem. This includes supporting innovators and entrepreneurs to develop and scale the product and services that will encourage community to get online. To try to close the usage gap, we're also working to improve data-driven decision-making, including exploring connectivity data to tackle key node spots and other coverage challenges. In the area of connectivity, we are working with government in order to shape policies and broader structure. from guiding around national digital strategies to drafting model policies. And finally, all of our work is founded on and driven by inclusion. Here we're working on everything from comprehensive digital readiness assessment to developing national digital strategy to ensure that the digital economy works for everyone. As I mentioned earlier, the internet has delivered enormous positive impact to many, and we need to continue on this trajectory. Digital, data, and other technology are crucial tools for the development of SIDS and for tackling key challenges such as climate change. The internet is a powerful driver of human development around the world, including to achieve SDGs. We need the internet for decision-making, policy-making, and developing and delivering products and services to improve lives and livelihood. The scale highlights the endemic challenge related to connectivity in many countries. There are fewer quick wins. It is complex and really multifaceted areas. It is about policy, coverage, regulation, inclusion, public-private partnership, urban and rural. There's a lot to think about, but we are thinking about it and we are doing it. I started by talking about the SDGs and how connectivity is essential for the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. We can take another phrase from the 2030 Agenda. In delivering access, connectivity, and inclusion, we must leave no one behind. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Riad. That was fantastic. And I'm sure we have a lot of questions. I did notice that Bill put one in earlier on into this session, so I'm just going to read his question. I'm sorry. And Bill, if you want on the modified, open up your mic and join in. So just want to read it first of all. It's from Bill Joris. To what extent does the ability to access the internet via cell phone impact the accessibility gap? And my sense, according to Bill, is that outside the developed world, it is substantial, but I'm not involved in the area. So he's, Bill, do you have any other clarification on that question before we start?
What motivated it was a story I heard some while ago of a guy who was a small farmer in rural, somewhere in West Africa. I'm not, I don't think it was Nigeria, but somewhere in that area, who had a cell phone which he was using to access markets for his products and decide, oh, I can get a better price if I go to the town east of me than for the town west of me. And it wasn't, he wasn't anything that could be considered part of the educated elite in his country, but it was a tool that was making his life better. So that's, and all he had was a cell phone. He didn't have any of the sort of computer tools that we're used to here. He didn't have a laptop, he didn't have a tablet, he didn't have any kind of hardware connectivity. He had a cell phone, and cell phones have gotten sufficiently inexpensive that being able to access a better market was enough to make the price worthwhile. So I don't know how common that sort of thing is, but that's what motivated my question. Thank you.
This is what we're noticing in most of developing countries. In many countries, especially the countries where I'm working on in the small island developing states, where you are in an island very remote from the main island or from the capital city, just the cell phone make your life completely different. Not only in terms of facing the challenges, the day-to-day challenges on climate change, connecting to the people, but also in terms of alert, in terms of national cohesion, but also social cohesion. So the internet is not only an instrument for making business, but is a key element when we say no one should be left behind. It is an instrument for national cohesion but also social cohesion.
So Bill, did you have a follow-up comment?
No, that covered it. Thank you very much.
Great. Recently we had this horrible disaster in Turkey and northern Syria. I understand that the mobile alert system wasn't working as effective as it should be. Do you have any comments about that?
I cannot comment on something that I do not have full information. I can tell you, for example, when we have last year the volcano in Tonga, the big disaster is because of the phone that we were able to save life, but it's also because of the connectivity we were able to deploy and assess the needs immediately. And that made it very efficient. You're not obliged to have the highest and the best technology. You need to use the potential of what exists already. And most of the time in many countries, the use of the infrastructure is not at its potential. And it's also a question of literacy, as I mentioned in the presentation.
And also a issue of fairness as well. As you pointed out, when women are excluded or from accessing, not just owning a phone, but access to the mobile, that has a direct impact. And we've seen that again and again in development where funds have gone into communities. The cases again and again show if they give the money to the wife or the woman of the family, they tend to spend it on their community, on their children within. Guys are not so I guess humanitarian to their children. They tend to have a little bit less caring, and I think this is an important element. I did realize taking many courses at GSMA that in India there was an issue of mobile issues with the providers, that the cell phone providers. They were accessing the information of women, and women felt very much victims of these unscrupulous sellers of phones, and that there was a bunch of measures put into place, and they're small measures, having female salespeople, having more security for women to be able to use the phones without being a victim of predators. So that's it's a go ahead. Sorry.
But but we need to take note that there was a real progress toward that. For the moment, we are around 7%. The women remain 7% less likely than men to own mobile phone. Globally, is around 264 million fewer women than men are accessing to mobile internet. So as a top of our priority for us as UNDP in our work on digital is mostly on digital inclusion. So that is what we are focusing. But I can say there were progress. We still need to do more, and we're still very ambitious on that because equality, for sure, we will reach it.
Perfect. Alfredo, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you for the presentation. It's very good. And I posted a couple of initiatives here in the island in Puerto Rico we have been working on, like, for example, the big ones and so forth. Now, when you talk about mobile devices and accessibility to, well, broadband, I was wondering what is the level of connectivity in terms of bandwidth that is your goal, or the UNDP, the organization you represent, for the future? Because I'm thinking that the next step, once you gain access to a mobile device and to the internet, is the next step to acquire some form of a hardware, like a laptop, a tablet, to enhance the services you can access and the applications you could develop for your country or your community. to share with them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. I'm inviting my colleague, Callum, also to join for answering to this question. Callum?
Thanks, Riad. Thanks, Alfredo. So there were two aspects to this. The first, in many of the countries that we work with, often there will be a kind of universal service obligation that providers will have to meet to deliver connectivity to their populations. But as Riad mentioned in his presentation, often regulation doesn't keep up with the pace of technology. So particularly as we saw in the context of COVID-19 and the pandemic, what was a standard USO 5-10 years ago is now being completely transformed with remote working, remote learning, and so there's a need for us to keep pace. The second aspect is something that Riad also touched upon, is this concept of what we call meaningful connectivity, which is something that the Alliance for Affordable Internet came up with a little bit of time ago, and many UN organizations have supported, which is essentially what you've mentioned there. What is the connectivity that is required to deliver a high quality user experience and to allow people to essentially live their lives using mobile devices and the internet? What is a meaningful level of internet access? This isn't quantified by megabits per second, but there is a kind of universal, I think, aim for things like 4G, LTE coverage, that kind of base minimum. It's not enshrined anywhere, but I think that's the kind of more aspirational direction behind it. Riad also mentioned the digital readiness assessments that we do in many countries. As part of this, a lot of our work is recommending or supporting on things like national broadband plans, which are often to redefine universal service obligations or to support countries in defining what are those kind of minimum requirements as well.
Thank you. Glenn?
Okay, I'm just looking for other questions in the mix here. So I have to go, and there's two things that I have direct experience. Actually, there's three. One, in the 90s, we had the rights to the wind-up radio made in South Africa, and it was heralded as a solution for communication. And unfortunately, it didn't achieve what it expected. It was I don't know if you recall, it was a fairly hefty device, and you had to crank it, and after 40 rotations, and then it actually played not very long, AM, FM, and shortwave. But that was an example of more hype than reality. I could tell you from personal experience. But I'm a serial entrepreneur. But after that fiasco, we were one of the first that actually created a netbook. I know Negroponte's a book is mostly known, but we created a netbook, and it was being made in Malaysia, not in China, and it used Sugar, a version of Linux, as a device. Again, great technology, reasonably priced, but again, you can't wet yourself only to a technology, and you can see how mobile has supplanted the importance of netbooks. I don't think you ever see a netbook, anyone using it at all. I'll show you what. So that basically is the netbook. It was called Ink Media that we created, but also a tablet. But again, you don't see it anywhere. So again, what's really important is that whatever solutions that come up, whatever agencies come up with solutions, it can't be just fixed on a particular technology. So I'm just curious on when you were mentioning about IXPs earlier on, how successful has IXPs in coming up with some of the gaps that exist? Because as we have a long way to go with 3 billion more people to be connected.
Thanks, Glenn. Riad actually has to jump to another meeting, so I'm happy to take that question if that's okay, Riad.
Yep.
It's okay, because I'm jumping in 2 minutes. Sorry, yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes. So I think on the IXP angle, Glenn, what we find with a lot of countries that we work in, particularly the small island developing states, as we had mentioned, is that bandwidth is a real challenge. So the traffic is overloading local networks. So the IXP angle for many countries is a really important aspect of resilience. So how do they strengthen local networks? How do they connect into the kind of global information economy essentially? So
Okay.
many countries that we're working with are looking at developing their own IXPs and off the back of the kind of submarine cable deployments as well. So for us and their work, it's a really fundamental part of kind of national resilience.
Okay, great. Callum or Riad, did you want to mention anything about the survey? Do you have a current survey that you'd like to for us to assist?
We have done a wide survey within the youth on the use of digital and how they see digital economy in small and developing state. I think we have more than 4,000 answers. We
Okay.
just finalized the analysis, and there will be a report very soon outline everywhere. So we are happy to share it with anyone, because whatever we do, it's transparent and communicated to everyone.
Okay, great. We're very sensitive to the fact you have to run off to another meeting. We do appreciate your time today. This is really quite insightful. And those who can't make this session, please pass it on to those who couldn't make it so they can listen to the recording. Again, Callum, Riad, we do appreciate very much your time today, and it was very insightful. I'll turn it over to Alfredo.
Yes, again, I want to thank both of you for your participation and the sharing the information of the work that you are doing. And thank you again for mentioning accessibility and inclusion as part of the theme, which is something that we in the North American School of Internet Governance are going to cover. Actually, is our theme for June right before the ICANN 76 meeting. So you're welcome if you're around Washington, D.C. to join us and participate.
It's a great pleasure.
So
thank you. Thank you very much for inviting us, Callum and myself. It was a real pleasure and an honor to participate to this event. And wishing you a very nice day wherever you are.
Thank you again. Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
That concludes the meeting today. We'll see you all next Monday. Thanks again.
Thank you, everyone.